Hello, testing. Okay. I think this is a good time to get started. So I'm Axel, and I'm from Employer Brand. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you all for joining me tonight. It's the ultimate form of validation to see the fruit of your labor right in front of you. So it really, really means a lot. Right. Before we start, I'd like to know in the audience who is familiar with Semrush, the company, and or has used our product before. Okay, cool. So for those of you who might not be super familiar with us, Semrush is a leading online visibility management and content marketing SaaS platform. Yes, that is a mouthful, but in a nutshell, that's who we are. And we were founded in 2008. And then since then, it's just been an explosive growth for us with more than 1,700 employees across 9 countries and 12 different offices. But I think the most impressive part is that today we're being used by more than 10 million marketers worldwide. So you might be wondering, why exactly is this content marketing SaaS platform putting on an event like this for Pride Month? Well, to put it simply, it's to create space, it's to build community, it's to have these types of conversations. I think that sometimes with Pride Month, we kind of forget a little bit where it started, where it came from. There's a lot of hyper celebration, and within that, I think the message gets lost. So we thought it was a good idea to reel back in and kind of have these moments to discuss with the community, to see who's out there, and to put on these types of events. But beyond the symbolic nature of this gesture, we also wanted to make something that was tangible and actionable. And for that reason, we've decided to make a donation to Checkpoint Barcelona in light, yes, please. In light of this event, we wanted to contribute to Checkpoint Barcelona, which is a really important NGO here, providing free health services to the LGBTQ plus community. And we are very, very grateful to have 2 representatives right here with us tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of how the night will unfold. We will have the roundtable discussion, followed by a Q&A, and then after that, we will have a much needed, informal, relaxed networking session where you can get to know our speakers a bit more, get to know members of our staff here at Semrush, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the night. And with that, Jet, our moderator, please.
First, let's give a round of applause to Axel for arranging this. Such a huge effort, so I think he deserved the recognition. So first, of course, thank you everyone for coming here. My name's Jet, and I've been in Semrush for 3 years now. So I work in sales, and I've learned a lot in marketing tech. But of course, it's not about what we're doing as a career. And I think the most important part here is I'm very honored and pleasure to be sitting with with the speakers that's part of our community, and all of you guys here as well being in the same room as us. So yeah, so to start with, and I would like to, of course, hear the opportunity to introduce each and every one of our speakers today, and then we can take it from there. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Rodriguez. My friends call me Tina. I have worked in digital marketing for almost a decade. Identify as a queer and a lesbian for political reasons. Also, I work now in product marketing for TransPerfect and Global Link specifically, and working on global strategies to connect our clients with multilingual audiences. So connection is a really big part of what I do and what I really represent. And as well, outside of work, I have authored a graphic novel about queer love and polyamory called De Polyamour de Enriches, which approaches queer love and polyamory with a lot of honesty and humor. And yeah, that's me.
Love. I'm Larson Wenzel. I'm from New York. I come from a brand strategy background, mostly working. I have tenure in Nielsen, and then also worked in advertising with a lot of major global brands. I've since made a pivot, and I still do freelance brand strategy on the side, but I own a queer natural wine bar in Barcelona, which is really bringing my talents and skills to a different perspective. And for me, across all of my tenure, have been really focused on how to connect people to products in a way that is meaningful and ultimately enriches not just the brand, but also the consumer's life. And so, yeah, I bring that to all things that I do, including today.
Hello, my name is Petar Dimitrov. I'm a Russian Bulgarian. I was born in Bulgaria, grew up in Russia. Not the most gay-friendly countries, probably, especially for me being a gay man. I worked for Semrush for 3 years. My job is a bit specific. I'm working with goal setting and reporting systems, but I also support our onboarding for HR. So I'm not an HR, but I do some HR stuff. And I'm also a DI trainer, diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer. That might be important for today's conversation. And yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Petar, Lars, Christina, really great having you here. And of course, as a start, we're here to really, of course, connect and to celebrate and also reflect of why we're here. And of course, some of the questions that I'm going to ask it's more, of course, it's Q&A. We got to be candid as well to really understand and learn from each other. And if there's anyone in the crowd that would like to jump in, and if anything that would resonate to you, please feel free. But of course, to warm us up, and I only have just like one simple question for now as a start. And I would like to ask each and every one of you, what does pride mean to you?
What does pride mean to me? That's pretty layered, but I'm going to kind of simplify it in describing it as queer joy. Queer joy in being visible, in being present, in taking up space, in showing up as my authentic self, in what I do, the way I work, what I create. It's about kind of being that person that I wish I saw when I was little. And I don't know if many of you can relate to that, but I didn't really have any kind of queer out LGBT role models. And I kind of just like want to be that for anybody else that needs it, and for myself, maybe for little Tina. So that's what pride means to me.
Love. I'm going to say that every time. For me, I think pride is a really complex issue. As a trans man, I think that there's a lot of layers behind pride, in the sense that we know it like in a more flashy way, as well as like what the actual history is behind it, and like the blood, sweat, and tears that have gotten us to this point of visibility. But in a setting like this and in a daytime moment, I think pride on a more personal level means the opportunity and ability to live my life as myself, just in a like very simple way. I think about the pride in being who I am when I tie my shoes. You know, I think it's about like who we are when we eat cereal, not just when we're, you know, visibly gay or doing things that we consider to be gay, queer, lesbian, trans, whatever.
Spot on. Yeah. Pilar?
Well, I'm included in the idea of pride basically for the last 3 years since I live in Europe. To be honest, before I never had an idea of pride, and actually before leaving Russia, I didn't know about the problems that we have and I have in being in a homophobic society. So for me, pride is a bit more about visibility. So this is the word we all mentioned today, and for me, it's about us being there, that we always have been there, and we will be there. So that's what pride for me is.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I mean, I'm from the Philippines, something that I would like to share as well. And it's just so refreshing to hear from a different perspective. You're from the US and, you're Latina.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
I
she's from
forgot to mention that.
Yeah, Puerto Rico and as Russian. And as myself in the Philippines growing up, I don't even know what pride is until I got here in Europe. So, and going back in the Philippines, growing up rather, we're tolerated for who we are, and I think probably this pretty much in every background from where we grew up, but like we're not quite accepted. Like, well, you can be like this, but don't do this, and that was hardship growing up as well. But now it's so refreshing that having in the same room, like we're more open of what we feel, and but we keep fighting of what is actually really right as to get that equality. So as a start, I would like to ask, can you share a bit about for you first, Tina, if you can share a bit about your journey towards feeling more comfortable and authentic in your professional life.
Perfect. So I'm also going to start with kind of the same experience that you had. I wasn't fully out in Puerto Rico. Most of my friends were gay and I considered myself queer, but I was never really in a queer relationship. And I think it was when I moved to Europe and I felt that safety to be myself. And I met my first partner and I felt more happy and comfortable in my own skin. Also starting my professional life here, I had the privilege that I had managers and I had colleagues who supported me. So I felt I slowly started feeling more comfortable, kind of like not editing myself, trying to like come more as I am and show more about my life. And I felt kind of supported in that. And obviously that helped me connect with my team a lot more. It helped me build trust. It helped me be my more authentic self, which in the end of the day kind of helps you at work as well in your performance. So that was my experience more or less.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think it really resonated to everyone else as well growing up. And sometimes you have to be conscious, like, should I be doing this in professional life? Or, we're in a different person at work, but at the same time, if you got it, like, it always comes at the right time, at the right place for you to become who we really, really are. And I think that's, thank you for sharing. And Pilar, anything that you can share as well?
Well, if we put it this way, am I holding the microphone well?
Yeah.
Good. So I'm actually not that comfortable. So since I moved here, obviously I became more open. I cannot say that I'm like open, like openly open, but I don't hide it anymore. Although I live in a country that protects my rights. I work for a company that protects my rights. And I know that Semrush, if something happens within the company, I will be protected. Still, I have this kind of something from my background that, for instance, if someone asks me, do you have a girlfriend or do you have a wife or something like that, I will feel uncomfortable. And instead of just saying, no, hello, I'm gay, I would probably instinctively try to explain myself and to say, oh, sorry, no, and like this. And this comes from my background when I was growing up in St. Petersburg and when I was living in Russia, when I just couldn't say anything directly. So yeah, I would say I'm still on my way to become fully open. And I do believe that's super important, because if you work in a place and part of your brain is constantly thinking about that something that bothers you, that you're not fully yourself, that doesn't make you fully efficient as well in your workplace.
That is true. Something that I would like to add there as well. I think it also comes with the people that surrounded to us that they need to unlearn whatever autopilot of what they've learned growing up as well. I mean, the Philippines were very quite conservative, but something that kind of like really for me as well. Last year when my grandma was visiting here, like the question actually she asked to me because they know that I'm like gay growing up, and she asked me when she was visiting here, "Iho," like in the Philippines we call it "Iho Iha" as well because we have this like Spanish culture. Do you already have a boyfriend now? And from that point, that kind of like really melt my heart that I don't have to say anything else. For that question, I know that I was fully accepted, and I think that came to a point as well, like, okay, now I'm in the right space, and that's really beautiful. And you're not alone. So, of course, you're here and being part of Semrush and being here in Spain, you have a community, which, of course, leads me to the next question here. And I believe you can pass the phone, the microphone. So, what does visibility means to you personally, and when it comes to your identity at work?
Um, for me, being visible is showing up as me and taking space and being very intentional with the space that I take. It means being able to, again, not to repeat myself, but like build that trust with my team. It means also for the people that, you know, we don't really choose who we work with. And for all those people that probably have never met someone super open or LGBT or from Puerto Rico or so many of the things that made me intersectionally me, to bring that experience and to show them what like a person like me is and what they do and what they can do and how happy and I can be and we can be. So that's what it means, at least for me.
I have a really complex relationship with visibility. I think being trans, sometimes we are hyper visible, especially if we are in the beginnings of our stages of our transition. That many of my years in corporate America, I did not have the option to be anything other than visible. Advocating for myself in terms of which bathrooms to use, needing to navigate conversations surrounding health and taking leave to take care of myself. And what that has essentially led to for me is that I'm at a point in my life where visibility is very much on my own terms. And I'm very grateful to be here talking with you guys because this is on my own terms. And I get to speak about my experience from a place of security and wisdom, knowing that I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who are interested in learning about all of our visibilities. But I have to say that my relationship with visibility is not necessarily one of trust. It's actually one of distrust. That very frequently, even experiences working in Spain in corporate environments, have made the decision to maybe not share who I am. And upon people finding out, having very negative experiences in terms of how people react and respond to parts of my authenticity that may or may not always be visible. Because sometimes visibility in terms of identity can also complicate the ways that people see us in ways that are beautiful, but also sometimes in ways that lead to hypervisibility and at times microaggressions or macroaggressions.
Couldn't agree more. I've been there, done that.
It's very
So,
difficult. It's
yeah,
complex, you know?
it is. It is. And even just showing up for your emotions in a candid way, or just like being who you are, even just showing up any such endearment, but that could, that could receive in the other way around negatively by someone else. And yeah, which was not a nice experience. But luckily that I was protected by HR, which they found it ridiculous when they got that.
Yay.
So period. Nothing get away from us. But anyway, Petter, anything you want to share as well?
Well, I already mentioned that visibility is a big word for me, but in this case, I would say that it's also important to know things. And even being a diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer, I don't know so much, and I really want to learn a lot. And there is a lot to learn about other people, and it's really the basic thing of what we should do. We should learn about each other.
Awesome. I'm spot on. And I mean, now that we've set the stage a little bit, and of course, now let's get to something a little bit more personal, and but of course in the best way. But I mean, I agree. Visibility is one thing, but expressing for whatever how you feel at work is in a different level. But now let's dig into what actually looked like each for you. And Petter, if you can recall a moment when you first decided to openly express your work, you are as part of LGBTQ plus as identity at work, what factors influence that decision?
That's a very good question, actually. As I said, I'm still not 100% comfortable with being openly gay.
Mhm.
But 3 years ago, when I just started my career at Semrush, I was very cautious about like what I talk, what I say to people around me, because I didn't trust much anyone because I just met these people. Slowly, I realized that the company and people who work here are pretty actually good with that and pretty calm, and everything was fine. But I really got the idea that I can be here as I am. I can be supported, and I will be protected, because the security is one of the most important things for me. Is like 2 years ago for the Pride, we had an kind of initiative from the HRs. We collected some kind of interview stories, personal stories of our employees, including very top level employees, managers, who just openly told about what they experienced in life, with very, very private details about their relations with their parents, about their careers, their sexual orientation influenced this. And when I saw this was the moment when I realized that this is it. This is when I can feel completely comfortable with everything that happens here. Still not 100%, but it was a big thing for me. So it was like 2 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And something that I would like as well to probably ask with you, Tina. Oh, I just remember earlier while you're introducing yourself, and I don't know, I'm just amazed how what you have achieved so far and what you've like actually keep doing as well. So something that I would like to ask here is how actually being openly LGBTQ plus help your relationship with your colleagues or managers or to anyone that surrounds you.
So also just to be like super open about like the privilege that I have, that I can in many ways that other people can't, be out and be, more so. In my experience, in most of my professional life, it's been very positive, and I'm very lucky and I'm very cognizant of that luck. And I try to show up and be very me, and also be that person for others wherever I work, that they can feel comfortable around me. Knowing that it's helped me develop deeper feelings with my managers, with my team members, with other LGBT people that I know are like on the team. Anytime that there's also like a group or an advocate club, I also always join, because I think it's very important to support and to be part of like being very visible, like extra visible at work to help others, knowing like my privilege. But definitely it's helped me build trust, deepen those relationships with my colleagues, which have also made them feel more comfortable to open up to me. And also I used to work in Mattel when I moved to Barcelona, and some of my colleagues in Mattel also like told me like, meeting you and seeing who you are and you being so open about your experience have made me question my experience and the way that I kind of go about the world. So that's really important to me. And that kind of just made me realize how I need to like continue to show up and take that space and show up who I am and tell my stories. And this is something really important. You don't really owe everyone your story, and that's very true. And you can be private in what you want to be private, and that, that's how people are. Just because you're LGBT doesn't mean like, yeah, I have to tell you everything about my life. No, you don't owe that to anyone. Boundaries are really important. But whenever you feel comfortable showing who you are and showing, again, that queer joy and how you live and how, live, laugh, love is also really important to build those relationships.
Wow. I love that. And two takeaways that of what I've learned so far, what you said just now is just show up and count your privilege. And because like you can be someone else's reason why they feel seen.
Yeah.
And that is really important. And wow, period. And
Period.
so Lars, were there any particular challenges as well? You mentioned earlier what like your experience during the corporate America. You've been in corporate for quite some time before moving here to Barcelona. But were there any particular challenges or barriers or anything positive outcome that you faced expressing your identity at work, or how did you overcome or handle them?
Yeah, I think that I love this question because it is both, right? It is barriers and challenges, but there's also huge fruitful elements that have come out of often being the only trans employee, which I think is something that is really difficult, because a lot of people, I think there's a cultural aversion to looking at trans people as human. And that affects things like ability to get jobs, ability to find housing, familial acceptance, all of these things. I made the conscious decision to not start my transition until I had my feet in the door. And I do think, if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't have gotten the opportunities that I did if I hadn't done it that way. But in doing so, I also felt I really had the opportunity to lead with this open heart, and talk to people about my feelings, of course, with these boundaries. And I'm not going to say that there weren't inappropriate questions, many of them. And working at a bar, that part of my journey is not over. But creating space and opportunity for people to feel like they have the space to make mistakes, ask difficult questions, understand, well, okay, if you are, making these decisions and this is going, like, what is this like? And being able to answer that honestly. And through that, having really great lasting friendships through my tenure in many positions that I've been at. And then also on the flip side, also having, experiences where you learn very quickly that this is not an environment that is going to be a safe environment for you. And that, I think, has made me much more agile. I think it has defined my ability and versatility as an entrepreneur, because I am quick to understand how to keep people in my organization, which all of my staff is way more trans than me in terms of aesthetics and incredible representation in the community. And I often, as a white trans man and as a white gay trans man, I am a very privileged member of my community in a variety of vectors. But to be able to also use that as a springboard for how I approach my leadership.
Well, we got an entrepreneur here, right here. And I have a question for you, Petter. You've been saying earlier as well, that it was a hard time for you to really come out, and you were really cautious as well on how people perceived you in a way, because of course you're not fully come out yet, but of course you feel very space and protected at the same time. And I would love that for you. But if a colleague expresses a perspective that might not align into your values, for example, how do you approach the situation? Are you trying to change their viewpoint because you've been in both worlds where people does not agree to you, and people would protect you no matter what? Or should you just focus to be on the fostering understanding and respect whatever that diverse opinion?
That's a very, very tricky question. So as I mentioned, I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer. And I get this a lot, unfortunately, when I face misunderstanding or people who do not want to understand or do not want to accept something. So my position here is clear for me, and I can explain it to you. So when I'm doing the trainings, my main task is to deliver the information that I have to deliver. So, and I will answer the questions, but I will never chase to change the person's perspective, because I don't believe I can cure a homophobe. I don't think I can do this personally, and I don't want to do it. If the person doesn't want to change themselves, it's not me who has to help. So my experience said that it's only therapy, like years of therapy with a professional psychologist, that can help, and I'm not one of them. So on the other hand, I'm very happy to have a discussion because it actually helps me a lot to understand my own world, because there are questions that I don't know the answers. I don't know how to respond. It's been not like long ago when I found a good answer myself. Why do straight people don't have a pride? I was like, really, why? Now I know. I have my opinion on that. But like, these kind of discussions help me actually evolve myself. But when it comes to workplace, it is a really tricky situation, because you need to work with these people. So, and if they just are naturally curious and they want to know more about LGBTQ plus community, I'm actually very happy to tell them a lot of stuff about my personal life as well, about my personal experience, especially on a party when I'm maybe a little bit tipsy. Really easy
Maybe at
for
my
me.
bar.
Good
Really easy
fluid.
for me to share some stuff with my colleagues. But if it gets to the point when I need to explain someone why it is important to use the correct pronouns and why it is normal to do so, I don't say I give up on that, but I'm like, well, that's your opinion, so I don't have much to do with that. So that, I don't know, folks, maybe you had this situation at your workplaces. How would you do this? That's actually the point of our today's discussion, right?
Yeah, that's true. You can't really change anyone's mind until they help themselves to change their perspective, because for example, if I look at maybe from my great grandfather, there's really nothing I can do there. Or I think probably this from older generations, because they just have a different experience. They just simply don't understand us. But in a way, of course, it's either if you're just gonna set that boundary. Boundary is really important, because because you can't change anyone's opinion or whatever belief, but if you set that boundary and you protect your time and energy, no one can take that away for you. So that's good. And also something that I would like to add as well here is something that probably you would like to add here as well, Tina, from what Peter has just said here.
Yeah, and just also piggybacking from what you just said, it's not really like our job to educate.
Exactly.
Like we can show up, we just demand respect, but it's also not my job to tell you, what you need to do, how you need to live, but just respect me and us. No, in my experience as a Puerto Rican immigrant here, coming to Spain, I think which I did feel very safe in many ways. I feel like also being an immigrant, I kind of created like my chosen family. I live in a queer bubble of my choosing. And like I mentioned earlier, when you're at work, you don't really choose who you have to spend your time with. And you suddenly spend so much time with these people. And sometimes you're very lucky and you have very easygoing, like-minded people that, is very pleasant. But sometimes you meet people that say the comments, the jokes that they probably heard their uncle say 10 years ago, and you think it's 2025, like, are we seriously saying that racist, homophobic joke? I realize it's a lot with like white Europeans. It's something that's very common, and which is like the dichotomy of like being in Barcelona is safer than maybe being in Puerto Rico. But I guess maybe like the openness or the things that they say and the jokes at work are very different. And I feel people sometimes say things there flippantly that is kind of shocking. And I feel like navigating that, I choose sometimes to see the best in people, which might be very naive. So I kind of leave with curiosity, kind of like, why would you say that? Or like, read the room. I don't think that was a very nice thing to say. And that usually does the trick. But obviously, I feel, at least in my job, that my team supports me, my manager supports me in HR, that I can escalate if needed. But I don't know, probably if you guys have something similar has happened when there's like an unfortunate joke or comment being said, how you handle it, what do you say, how do you kind of diffuse the situation without kind of betraying yourself, depending on like the level of the comment. But it's something very tricky, especially in the workplace, where you don't really want to cause an issue or rock the boat, or that's someone from C-suite that you don't really want to, it's difficult. And I'm curious to see how others also like handle that.
I have a mic here. If you guys want to share anything, feel
Safe
free.
space.
Safe space, yes.
Cool.
Well, actually, we might have a comment from our online viewers. We are live streaming this
Okay.
after all.
Hi, yes. Our online viewers have a comment. They are asking how do you set up digital identity and visibility as a queer professional to navigate authenticity and pride in, in a traditional workplace?
Maybe Lars, you want to answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really great point. I'm a very big fan of setting boundaries surrounding digital identity, in the sense that not everyone gets to have my Instagram if I don't want it. I think that's really important, because there are parts of our daily life that are stigmatized even thinking about owning like a queer nightlife space, so much of queerness is pushed into nightlife. Because it's seen as not appropriate for children and not appropriate for daytime. So then we're seen as party animals when really we're just looking for safe spaces with one another. And so I think about that in terms of being able to feel like you're in charge of your own story and your own narrative. And then also on the flip side, in part due to tokenization, but also now on my own journey with my own project, I'm very proud to say that my bar is queer, 100% queer and trans owned. And that's actually part of the brand narrative that I'm creating, about creating spaces that are really by us and for us, not just on a very hyper capitalistic standpoint, but also from a perspective of actually building something for us. So I think that there's an interesting question, and I personally in my life have swung both ways. My life is very private. I'm not bisexual. Axel's looking at me silly. And then also on the flip side, understanding the power of visibility to really understand that we do have power in our stories, and that this doesn't just have to be something that is told secretly or in a way that disempowers us from being able to share our own lives, our whole lives, or as much of our lives as we want to with our colleagues.
That's true. Like having an online identity is like what stories you want to be told to, people who want, like how you want to be perceived and how you want to take in control of that narrative. Because sometimes maybe, other may see it differently, but having that online identity as well, it's up to you how you really want to be, how you want to impose how it should be.
And you can explain the meme, but also you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't have to really explain ourselves, right? Like, but anyway, yeah. Well, thank you for all sharing those real raw experience. And of course, having a visibility at work takes a lot of courage. But let's talk about like the flip side for a second. And from what you've said there, Lars, is something that maybe you can add. How do you think visibility or authenticity contribute to your professional success or workplace culture in general? And not only like being a queer owned trans bar, which is like it's really good, that's having like more safe space within the community, but like what's if you can share a little bit more of the authenticity that you can contribute with what you're doing right now, and how's it going so far?
Yeah, the bar's going really great, actually. From a financial perspective, we just had the first month where we were like, oh, wow, okay, amazing. So, and we've been open 8 months. Yay. I think also, just to pull from my past experience as well as my more marketing background, I think being queer people, we have the opportunity, not everyone takes it, but I think most of us do, to live a more empathetic life and to look beyond who we are, because we've been told that we're a certain type of person for most of our lives, and we get to make the decision, hopefully in whatever way we can, to live our authentic life. And in doing so, we start asking questions about other people's authentic lives. And I think that brings in really important questions about like what you were saying about finding comfort and taking your time in terms of visibility, as well as the intersectional piece that Tina was touching on. I think that makes us better marketers. I think it makes us better storytellers. And I think it helps us create products that resonate with larger audiences. I'm a firm believer that if you are in a room making a decision and everyone looks the same, whether that's a circuit party or an office, you're failing. That decision is not going to be a good one. We live in a world that requires, especially as we become more global, and we see devastating effects of capitalism and world governments, and tech certainly has a role in making smart decisions to make a better world. We see the opportunity and the requirement to lead with diversity, not as a badge of look at this person who's in the room, but letting that be what informs our leadership. And I think in there's great power.
Okay. Anything you want to add there, Tina?
That was an incredible answer. I feel like there's very little I want to
Sure.
add. But absolutely, it does make us better marketers. We see kind of the gaps of the stories that aren't being told. Even in the most like basic sense, kind of in terms of like visuals as well, and websites and assets. And you're kind of just like, wait a second, this is looking very white. What's going on here? Or this is seeing very heteronormative. Like, let's change this. We can have that impact and we can make people feel more visible in the marketing and our strategies and our performance marketing. And I feel, especially as global brands that we work in, and we want to really reach our audiences, which are global audiences that come from every shape, size, color, sexual orientation, sexual identity. We need to be the ones to bring that, because the streets
Yeah.
won't.
And speaking of that, speaking of that marketing work, how do you exactly, your queer identity influence the way you approach or storytelling or branding or customer engagement?
Same thing. I feel kind of like bringing that empathy, bringing that like point of view, bringing that like sense of like knowing whose messages are being prioritized and which are the ones that are not being prioritized, and kind of bringing that to the table in terms of like strategy with managers. And not because people are necessarily doing it on purpose. They're obviously not. I don't think it's intentional. But I think as queer people and living, in the margins, we have that perspective and kind of just like can see who's being prioritized and who isn't. And I think that definitely comes into play and really helps me in my storytelling, branding, and strategies.
Sure. I mean, of course, having we've seen how powerful visibility can be, and of course, none of this happens in a vacuum. But of course, now moving to the last questions that we have, let's move in terms of like leadership and allies. And so, and anyone can take the mic. But what role do ally supportive leadership play in encouraging visibility and authenticity? Or how can we make sure that visibility does not lead or targeting or exclusion?
Sure, I can start. I'm going to start with like, I think there's two pieces. And I think the first one is really hippie woo woo, and it is friendship. Like, if you have ever worked at a job where you did not have a friend, that is an awful work environment. And on the flip side, even if you have someone who is in your corner and they don't know how to use your pronouns yet, or they don't know exactly what it means for XYZ that's going on in your life, if they're your friend and they're a good friend, they will show up for you. And we all need people to show up for us. And in the workplace, it's not like we are in the show Severance, like we show up with our whole selves, and we need people in our corners. And on the flip side, I think from a leadership perspective, I think it's about owning vulnerability and understanding where your weak points are. Like, something that I'm thinking about in terms of my business is I don't speak Catalan yet. I speak Spanish. I'm a semi-decent copywriter in Spanish, but I need to understand this language of this country that I've lived in for a pretty relatively short period of time. But I need to up my game in terms of showing up and being a better marketer and communicator and community member to local populations, and as well as international populations of which there are many languages I don't speak. And so I think that from a leadership perspective, understanding all of the ways, understanding our blind spots. Whoa. Understanding our blind spots, ringing the alarm, if you will, to be able to ask for help when we need it, and show up as humans.
Yeah. How many of you are like Spanish descent or from here in Barcelona or Spain, or a few ones?
No, I mean, no.
Yeah. Nice. So everyone's here are non-Spanish, I guess. Yeah, or like Spanish or it's better. Okay. Yeah, I mean, probably reason where I'm getting at is because of course sometimes not only our gender or is something that for us to prove our visibility, but sometimes of course we need to catch up with the language where we're surrounded with. And I couldn't agree more. Like for me, I've been here in Spain for over 5 years now. As much as I'm fluent conversationally, but like I'm still having a hard time writing, like thanks Google Translate, but that kind of works. But yeah, this has been very powerful today, and now we're bringing it home. Let's shift gears into what's practical as well, and for anyone who's listening and wondering, and of course alongside our speakers, and how can organizations better foster environments that encourage authenticity and openness for LGBTQ plus professionals?
I can take it. Well, so being the representative of Semrush, I can basically speak on my experience from here. What is the most important for an organization is to provide security. I've been saying this word today a lot of times, but that's really something that we should start with. This is the basis. You should feel safe at the workplace. You should feel protected, not only by the government, but also by the company. So the first thing the company should do is should speak out loud about their opinion. What do they support? What do they feel like? What do they believe in as a company? So this should be public, and this should be supported by the employees. Second of all, there should be policies that clearly state what is it about, how we protect our employees, and what are the consequences if we do not follow the rules that we have here. And just like an idea, so it actually came out to me recently, the idea that it does work. When I do the trainings, we usually do them in pairs. One HR representative as a trainer, and one folk like me, who is not an HR. And whenever, so the most popular thing that we hear on this training is like, oh, you have these DI trainings only because you need to fill in, like, your KPIs as HRs. And I'm like, I'm not an HR, so I'm not doing this for my KPIs. This is not part of it's not even part of my job. I do it as a volunteer because I believe in this. And what Tina actually mentioned several times today is that we do not choose people we work with. That's correct. I agree with that, because when you come to a company, you just get these folks that you work with. However, we can influence on that. So if we one thing is the quotas, we don't have these quotas in Semrush, and I don't support the idea of quotas when we hire employees. But what I believe in is changing the perspective and the mindset of people who hire. So, and these kind of trainings that the company should provide, they actually can change these things. They can help people get rid of their perspectives, of their biases that they have in their heads, and control everything they have in this situation.
And now, going to the very last question that I would like to ask each and every one of you before we're going to get more wine in the kitchen. So yeah, and so anyone can take the mic. So what considerations do you think are important when thinking about being open about your LGBTQ plus identity at work?
I mean, it's going to be pretty repetitive, I think, but security, absolutely. And having a manager and colleagues that can back you up, having friends that can support you, that can show up for you if you need to escalate something, to be, unfortunately, like if something happens, they hear about it, you tell them that they can also kind of go to bat for you. I think it's really important. And I think that first kind of feeling of security, safety, allyship are three very important factors for when you show up and how you show up at work. At least for me, I think it's really important.
Spot on.
I think researching companies as you're looking for jobs is really important. Like, for instance, seeing that there's an event like this, for me, would be a green flag. Seeing an event that champions LGBT identity outside of Pride Month, extra green flag. I think there's being able to see people who look like you in your office. I have worked at a place where there was not a single person of color, and the work wasn't that great. You know what I mean? And on the flip side, being able to look internally and understand, am I ready to potentially have difficult conversations? And what is my support system outside of work to make sure that that I'm supported when I get home from my 9 to 5, or in my case, my 7 to 3. But also to make sure that support is holistic. Also, just a note in terms of things that people, as a trans person, that I look for things like, what kinds of surgeries are covered under healthcare plans?
Yeah.
What are the diversity in hiring? I ask for data. I know you said that you're against quotas. I'm pro quotas. I think it's very important to see different types of representation in our companies. I think it's important. And I think that especially as we are under a rise where we're seeing tons of pride campaigns, tons of pride, even like the things that were more cosmetic going away, seeing continued investment in LGBT identities in the workplace is crucial. And it's not just about pronouns, it's about creating an entire holistic environment.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Petar?
Yeah, maybe something I could add is about basically being open. I would never force or support anyone to go open just because of this being open. If you're not ready, if you don't feel 100% safe, if you don't believe that you're 100% protected, or there are any other reasons why, you don't have to be open. It's your right to be as you are. You can be closed as long as you need. Just feel safe. Okay, that's probably it.
Wow. Petar, Lars, Tina, thank you for sharing all of your experience, and it has been quite a learning. And yes, there's a question.
There is more than a question, it's more a concern from the audience. What they are saying is that, one second, that companies usually talk in a good line, but if you make a report to human resources, you might expect to be put on the fast track out, so they don't listen to you or they won't care. What's your he says that he speaks from the experience. And then one second, because he sent a second comment. But what do you do when new leaders? But I will just read it because I didn't have time. But what do you do when new leadership comes in and changes the environment? Suddenly they open and diverse environment is no longer welcoming, especially when you are described as too expressive. So this is a person that is serving.
Something that I can probably answer, and then of course any one of you can jump in. Just like what Tina said earlier, we're 2025. If that's already happening, why are you still there? You know, like, but sometimes we don't have any choice because we gotta earn that coin. You know, and I've been there as well. Like on my first job back in the Philippines, it was too awkward being with my boss, and of course it's just so hard for me to express how I feel. But I didn't have a choice because it was my first job, and I think each and every one of us here, like no matter how far we've gone through to our career, something that you'll never ever forget is your actual first job. And that's just a different experience. But at the end of the day, you need to control what is right for you. If this is just not right for you, and if the company's just not doing anything for you to get protected, then find some options and take control for whatever other spaces where you can get into, because it's not the end of the world. Anything could change in the next 2 years or 5 years, but it's going to get better, and we've all been there.
I think also something really important is that where we live at the moment, if the person in the audience is living here in Barcelona, I know that here there's a lot of protection for workers, and there are a lot of associations for LGBT people and workers that maybe they can go and do a consultation, and maybe do something, take a legal route. And I know obviously a legal route sounds super scary, and there's money involved, but there are, I know, many groups and associations here that can support with that and give guidance and consultation.
Yeah, and just ask for help. That's really important, because I think that's the only answer for. And of course, and I agree with you, depends on where your situation at, from which country you're staying in, and it is scary as well. If you're just not in the right space for you to get that kind of help. But again, thank you everyone for sharing your experience. And something that I would just like to, of course, share everyone here, that Pride isn't just a month; it is a space. It is a moment for us to be celebrated. We exist, we matter, and yeah, thank you for everyone. Yeah, sure.
They are not here, but they also. One last question: how can leaders and allies go beyond symbolic gestures to create real support for authenticity and visibility, so that being seen becomes a strength rather than a risk?
I kind of already touched on this before, but look at concrete things.
Mhm.
Look holistically. If you are a place of work and you have a dress code, and that dress code is based off of gender, what about a non-binary person? What about someone who's in the middle of something? What about a queer person that has things to be, as mentioned, too expressive? Many of these things that are too expressive. And yeah, it's super ableist as well. Yeah. Look at things like paternal leave, maternal leave, parental leave, the ability to cover gender affirming surgeries, and then as well as take a good look internally to understand where your weak points are and get outside help whenever you need it. And from an individual perspective, if you are in a place where you are not safe, start quietly planning an exit that keeps you on your feet. Quietly, I mean it. And if you have to take legal routes, take them, but make sure that you have food on your table and make sure that you are not in an environment that is harmful to you.
I think you nail it down. Yeah, couldn't agree
Yeah.
more.
There's someone wants to ask you.
Yes. Axel, if you can pass it mic.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi. I kind of just wanted to, I guess, answer that question or give my thoughts. Hello. On it, because I mean, this is a bit radical. Maybe it's going to be controversial to say, but I feel like DEI is kind of being rolled back in the USA, certainly in the UK where I'm from, and maybe other places too, and it's very concerning. And I feel like DEI as a concept has a kind of poor branding in a way. I'm obviously pro DEI training, and I think every company should have that as a compulsory element. But I think a lot of people who maybe aren't part of a community or are not marginalized in any way are uninterested. They'll probably be like, well, I'm not a racist, I'm not a homophobe, so why do I need to do this training? It's kind of they feel a bit patronized. And I feel like, basically, to answer the question of what can leadership do, what can companies do, I feel like the way that we train people, maybe we can shift the spotlight a bit from, let's say, DEI training for LGBTQ. Why are we focusing so much on the marginalized people? Like, what about the people doing the marginalizing, if that makes sense? So this is going to be a bit roundabout, but I have a point. There's a man in America called Jackson Katz who talks about violence against women, and he basically says, why do we have this term gendered violence or violence against women? Like, who's actually doing the violence? In the majority of the cases, it's men. And so he focuses on educating men about that, not on making more visibility of women who are the victims, right? Because when you say violence against women, you erase men from the equation entirely, right? We're not thinking about men. So when we talk about LGBT representation or LGBT marginalization, shall we say, who's doing the marginalizing? And I'm not saying we should start pointing fingers at work, but maybe we should start educating more on how broken the system is, and rather than putting the spotlight on queer people and us kind of having to be role models or somehow, like stand up for certain things, why don't we encourage everyone to sort of, anyone who's maybe not in the community, to reflect a bit more on what does it mean to be straight, actually? What does it mean to be whatever it is, like white or, part of any community? And I think that's how we will get through to people better, rather than forcing them to look at a community that maybe they're not a part of and they're not particularly interested in, or they believe that they have no prejudices against. We all need a bit of self-reflection and education on like our history, our true history. Like if we have racism, for example, why is that really? Is it just because people are evil, or is it because of colonization and many, the history and all that kind of thing? And I think we'll get through to people better that way than, queer visibility is important, pride, absolutely for it. But yeah, that's just my thought. But it's a bit out there, and I don't think most companies would be up for making those kinds of changes. But I think that's yes. And yeah, the thing about quotas as well, like I kind of get what you're saying, because quotas are very taboo. But when you look at it as more, rather than trying to get unqualified people in just because they are of a certain group, why don't we look at it more as there's been positive, what's the word? Positive action, affirmative action. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Affirmative action for white straight men since the beginning of time. So I don't think all straight white males who have sort of got into their positions have been qualified more than other marginalized people, but we don't see it that way. So it's a shift of perspective that I think is needed across the board for all marginalized peoples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Period.
Truly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, yes, just a little note. I think we're entering the Q&A segment of the night. So
Yes.
please, everyone, share, ask, comment,
We have
whatever
a
you want.
question over
Yes,
here.
I see that. Here you go.
Thank you. Now that you were speaking about the quotas or no quotas, debating if it's a good idea or not, I remember that I asked a friend what he thinks, and he told me, hey, so more than quotas, I think that we need anonymous interviews, and not only anonymous, but also that we don't know the gender of the person, or we don't know the way that person speaks, or the accent. So maybe we should have a modified voice interviews. I know this is not common, but I haven't found a forum to speak about this. So I think this is the perfect forum. Do you guys think that we're ready for this type of interviews?
I think so. For example, in speaking from my experience coming to work here in Spain, I was shocked that they told that you're supposed to put a picture of yourself on your CV. That was totally shocking to me. And it's expected. And if you don't, you probably won't pass the HR. And I don't know about you guys, but that is for me like totally insane. And it speaks a lot about the culture, no shade. But why? Like, why do we need to put a picture of ourselves? Why do we need to put our gender? Why do we, you know, I would go so much of that step forward to like blurring our voices. Like we're supposed to be qualified because of our skills, our soft skills, not what we look like, how we speak, how we identify.
True.
That's actually a good point because, again, on my trainings that we do on the diversity, equity, inclusion, one of the exercises is we take a look on a CV and try to make sure that we understand that when we see a birth date, when we see a gender, when we see a photo, we start to get biased. And the idea is not to get rid of the biases. We cannot get rid of the biases when we talk to other people. That's natural for us, but we need to know how to control them, and we need to understand that we are biased right now and just to try to control them.
I think something that both of these comments touch on that I think is really interesting is I feel like very frequently when people are confronted with their biases, they say, I have so much to learn. And what I really like about Jackson Katz is he talks about unlearning. And I think where you're coming from as well is like, what happens if we strip away these information points that that can tell us, you know, inform our biases, right? I think that there's some really interesting opportunities in tech in terms of like actually you were seeing algorithms start to talk back and say this is biased, and that I've been built by like a very flawed system being humanity. And so I think there's some really interesting provocations there. I think there's also a lot of dangers because I think, like for instance, when I'm looking to hire someone, my first time working in hospitality was when I didn't have papers. And I was hired by someone who knew that I did not know how to bartend. And that was very much someone taking a chance on me. And in that, I from a blurred perspective, I wouldn't have gotten the position, but I did get it because someone took a chance on me. And I do think that that when we think about, you know, stripping away voices or signals of like race or gender or cultural background, there is something to be won there. But I also wonder, and this isn't necessarily an answer, it's more of a provocation. When we do that, we're also not accounting for the way that systemic oppression affects the ability of who even walks through the door, who has access to training, who has access to college, who has access to higher education, who has access to the ability and time to learn a new language as well, when we think about different forms and waves of migration. So I think that there's something to be won there, but I also think that it doesn't necessarily solve the entire puzzle. And I also don't know if we have answers yet. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done, girl. And so
Starting.
and happy Pride. Yeah.
More questions from the room?
All right, I see you first.
Well, not sure if it's within today's topic, but how about polyamory and ethical non-monogamous relationships? Because I am like polyamorous person. I was amazed to see that one of the members today is also. And like usually we don't talk about those people. Yes, we do speak about LGBTIQ plus community, which is amazing. But how about polyamorous folks? Yes, because we are also kind of like discriminated. It was mentioned about like maternity leave, paternity leave, etc., or like compassionate leave, or if you have to take care about your partner who is not your like official partner, or kids of your partner or something, like it's not covered by law or anything. It's like on your own, and you're on your own. There's no legal basis about that at all. Like, so yeah, basically just a comment.
No, that's so true. And in a way, I feel like that's a part of my life that even it's like harder for me to come out to. I always talk about my partner, and I feel very like, about me being with my fiance and whatever, but being like coming out as polyamorous, or that we're open, or that, we have a hot date, is something that I really need to feel really in a really safe space. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's just like it's just kind of all interlaced. I feel in the LGBT, it's very queer. It's very marginalized. It's a queer relationship, and it's difficult, and I totally understand that.
And yeah.
Hello, thank you. My name is Ray. I have a content marketing agency called DSLX. Our mission is to empower minority writers to write. I've had people recently coming to me saying, I'm not LGBT, or I am not neurodiverse, will you still hire me? And I feel like I've got my branding too far the other way, and people are feeling like I'm potentially discriminating against them for being straight or for not being part of a minority community. So how do you think that businesses can be inclusive on the other way, and how do you eradicate bias as well when you're hiring someone? And Lars, I don't know if you do your hiring for your bar, but how do you stop yourself from leaning towards someone that looks like you or identifies as similar to you, as opposed to someone that doesn't but still has the same skills, if not better?
First of all, congratulations on making a space that sounds like it's really safe, and it's really like championing a lot of people. That's huge. I have the same issue, less so in terms of hiring and more so in terms of clients. So my bar, a huge part of our concept is championing natural wine, which is a very queer product in the sense that it really bucks a lot of norms in terms of how to make something that's been around forever, but has been very contaminated by big brands and lots of chemical additives. So trying to make something that's better for the earth, blah, blah, blah. That's a diatribe I could go on for forever. But I have people who love natural wine who are sometimes afraid to come to my bar. And I tell them all the time, I go, babes, come. Like, it's literally just like, you are so welcome. In making a safe space, or I think more people are using the term intentional space, because we can't always guarantee that every place is going to be safe. What we are trying to do is make a space that everyone can feel comfortable in. And what I do in my case, in terms of hiring, I'm actually very intentionally trying to hire trans people and train queer and trans people to work in wine. That's like very much what I'm trying to do. So in terms of, I collaborate with straight people all the time for events and different types of things. But in terms of hiring, I'm actually quite specific in trying to nurture job training for a community that doesn't normally get it. But in terms of clientele, I think it's about finding that fine line of like, an intentional space just means that the bar is high for everyone. Very frequently, the first person I ever had to kick out of a bar that I was working at was marginalized in many, many ways, and they were not happy, and I was not happy because I didn't want to kick them out, but there was a consent violation. Any single identity can create an unsafe environment, especially if you add alcohol into the mix. So for me, creating a safe space, and maybe this is helpful, maybe it's not, is not about unilaterally focusing on one group. I think this happens a lot in terms of like flinta spaces, where there's this idea that there's certain genders that are more safe than others. And yes, men have been raised in a variety of ways to perpetuate violence, but every single gender is a gender that could be potentially unsafe. The person who's caused me the most harm in my life is a trans person. So it's like the way that we create safety is by creating high bars in how we treat one another. And as long as you can reach that bar, you are welcome in my bar, and you are welcome in any project I work on, regardless of identity. And I'm going to always give a little bit more of a risk take on the person who I think is maybe not being given that opportunity elsewhere. I hope that helps.
Any questions from the room or anyone?
Going once, going twice.
Yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Yeah.
Hello, so my name is Thiago. I used to work for Femtech for a period tracking app called Clue and was part of the GI committee as well. So I'm interested in specific actions that you take at Semrush with the diversity, equity, and inclusion team, especially regarding the reframing that I think like some people raised that before. I think that coming from different backgrounds, and I'm not only talking about queer, but you also had people from, different background situations, like beyond, just pride and queer and stuff. And really bring into the workplace, I think the mindset of like asking questions. I mean, it's like not so important to have answers for things, but like how do we ask better? And how do we frame things in a way that, people are taking this open culture and like open feedback into what they do and how they mingle with other people. So I think that for me, it was easy to have proactive actions. So for example, a code of conduct, or I'm not with a microphone, I'm not used to, or having, Slack channels, or having, for example, like best practices for hiring and so on. But I wanted to know, how do we deal with reactive like issues? So for example, if somebody is going through like microaggressions, or like if something is not like right, like how do we deal with that as a company to address that? Because again, you can go to HR, but then HR also may have their biases. So how do you make sure that people really feel safe beyond only having visibility? Because in the end, it's like it's something that is more complex than just, clothing or, or having like affirmative action. So how do like, what kind of initiatives are like a proper training or feedback systems? Like what do you have here in place to make sure that people feel safe for sure?
So being the only one here from Semrush, I can take the answer for this. So, well, let's start from the beginning. First of all, in order to point out a problem, we need to know that there is a problem. For instance, another example about harassment. I didn't know what harassment really is before I went through a training. I just didn't know that the certain behavior that I suffered before actually is a harassment. Same with all the problems that the diversity, equity, inclusion covers. So first of all, we need to educate people and to show them, look, this is what is not supposed to happen. So if you face this, this is a no-no situation, and we need to talk about that. Obviously, HRs are also humans. They can be biased. That's why, again, we have trainings that deal with biases. So, but trainings, you know how trainings work sometimes, especially in corporate environments, when we force people to go to the training and they're like, well, whatever. So, Dane, the most important thing here is to lead by example. So I personally try to do as much as possible to show publicly actions that are covering diversity, equity, inclusion things. We arrange, again, I'm not HR, but I still try to do these kind of things because I believe in them. We try to provide relatively regular meetups for LGBTQ plus employees and allies, so that we can have a space for talking. We actually started it in a funny way. We had a certain list of topics that we were going to discuss online in a meeting, and actually the very first meeting turned into a kind of group therapy session where we all just discussed our problems, not even work-related problems, but general problems. And it went so well that now we had a pause, like for several months, just because we didn't have these calls. I usually lead them. And today, the head of our communication team actually said, well, we have ideas that we need to support them. So people asking to get back to these calls. So we will continue them. So first of all, we need to educate people. Second of all, we need to promote it by actions. And third of all, we need to provide safe spaces where people can openly talk about this, so that they have a community of friends, people who can support you, so that you're not alone with this. So you're not going alone to the HR, not knowing if the HR will actually be on your side, right? So yeah, that's my answer.
Also, just maybe to add, this is an HR initiative as well, this very meeting. You know, the fact that we're putting this on, the fafact that we are inviting internals, that we're inviting, stories that can be a bit compromising for certain people. That is creating space. That is kind of the whole point. So I think that's already one event, one action that we're taking.
I mean, probably, you can see it probably for myself, been here for 3 years now, and couldn't be more proud of really being part of this company. And when it started, I actually work closely as well, and I know personally the head of culture. She's based in Amsterdam, and it's nice as well that everyone just take initiative. Everyone have their safe space. I work in sales, but I mainly work with enterprise accounts, which is, of course, when you work in that environment, it's very competitive and very tough. But at the same time, they give a space for us just to reflect, and we have also spaces where we get to actually meet our team. And also, at the end of the day, it depends on your manager, because if your manager really protects you regardless of the gender or whoever it may be, then you should be fine, because you don't need to really address everything in HR. Because if you're actually in the right team and the right people that you work with, nothing can go wrong.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. And I feel like having a manager and having maybe a VP who, really supports you, you can kind of bypass like HR. And there's like people maybe with more with more power that can protect you and support you. So definitely agree that having, really good management is important. And just echoing what Pitar said, like about having like a space like Entrance Perfect, we have like an advocate group and we have a chat on Teams where we're just constantly talking, and it kind of serves as therapy, kind of serves as like anybody has question like, oh, this happened to me, someone sent this email, like what do I do? We kind of discuss, and there's like power in numbers, and we can like all kind of discuss the best ways to kind of like escalate what we do. So definitely echo both of those.
Actually, I would just want to add a little bit about my coming out story, coming out as trans at work. We did not have an ERG in place because it was a medium-sized agency of about 40 people. And what I did was I told like my work best friend, who was a gay man, he's not dead, he's in New York. Thank you, Aaron. I told him, and we kind of strategized, and I had a really good relationship with the CEO. So I asked the CEO for a meeting, and I told him, I want to tell this part of my story. This is something that's going on in my life. It's going to be obvious in the workplace. How do I make sure that you have my back? He was amazing. And was everyone at that agency prepared as he was? No, but knowing that I had someone in my corner, and I'm so happy you said that because I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, I reached out to the CEO and the VP and made sure that they knew what was going on and that they were clued in so they could be my cheerleaders in the situations that were maybe going to be difficult. And in the end, that was my best work environment ever, before creating my own, which maybe is a different thing. But I think making sure that you give people the opportunity to be in your corner. And I like what you said about talking about things among people, because sometimes it's like that person is their best friend, and if they did a microaggression to you, the best thing that could happen is someone else talks to them about it. I'm a big believer in believing that everyone is capable and on the same page about the things that matter. Yeah.
Sure. Right. So a round of applause with our speakers today. And of course, again, Pride isn't just a month. And I think what we've learned today as well, that it is also a mindset, and it is very powerful as well. And as a reminder that, it's really important to show up for as ourselves, and for ourselves, and just like of being who you are. And I think that showed up today, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And thank you, Semrush, for putting this together. I think in the international political climate that we're living in, and not only in the US, but internationally, I think that creating this space is like the buzzword of today, is super important, and it's political and it's radical. And thank you so much.
Of course.
Period.
And to thank you guys, we just wanted to give you a little something. just thank you for being a part of this. It's really, really sweet. It has an extra bit more than what you guys have. So
Yay!
here you go. One for you. One for you. You don't have to open it right now. That's a bit.
Thank you.
It's like Christmas all over again. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for showing up. I think we can maybe start now the less charged conversations and head to the kitchen. And
wine.
yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.